the Chateau Town Hall. We already have the tripod rolling. I've done the intro on there for the video. Now we're waiting for a few people to come in, but we'll get moving. Essentially, this township has implemented a no recording bylaw. So we're going to come record, and we will see if they're actually going to enforce their no recording bylaw. This is the Chapeau Town Hall. All right. My hands are kind of full here. I'm going to have to juggle things around. Is Alvin in the building? Alvin being the bylaw officer. Take a look around. And I'm sure now they're debating what to do exactly. We've got a nice view here. They're on the lakefront. I don't smell anything. I got the sniffles. Let's go for a walk down the stairs. So down here, where the doors, windows, but there's windows all inside of the room, is the council chambers, they call it. So that's where we have town meetings. Use of cameras, recording devices, or photo phones is not permitted. Now, we've always been recording the town meetings, but just Monday, they claim to have officially passed their bylaw, making it enforceable. So we're going to see if they'll actually enforce. Now the bylaw officer is not here, but I'm sure he's making his way back.
What?
I said, are you leaving?
Yeah, it's my lunch. I have a late lunch.
Hey, Mike.
What's up?
All good, huh?
Good. Alright. Tripod. I don't know if it's possible for me to share stuff from my phone during the live. How's it going, Section 2B? Oh, that's no fun. So far, it's business as usual. We're just kind of waiting for the bylaw officer to come back here. There's only one, and we saw him driving around on the way here. Is Judy in the office?
Sorry?
Is Judy in the office?
No, she's not here today.
She's not here today? That matches up with being told that Reja is the current acting CAO. So it looks like this facility was made possible due to some tax money. $1978. Exactly. Which is why the no recording in municipal buildings is just ridiculous. Plant. It's glitching instead of zooming out. Can I type in the chat while it's going? Let's go find out. What section would that be in? In this one? Kind of left my tripod over there, but that's fine. So let's see what they promote for kids. I thought it said Molly gets made for a second. Junior fiction English. Social psychology. Where is the young children's? This is a positive thinking area. Young children's is probably in the front somewhere. How's it going, Jax? I see lots of Dr. Seuss books. For some reason, I thought that some of these Dr. Seuss books were being pulled out. Honestly, the selection here looks good. And that might have something to do with lack of funding. They don't receive the funding to replace it with their indoctrinated agenda. They have what they have. Je peux te demander une question? Oui, monsieur. En tant que librarian, toi, as-tu des choix dans qu'est-ce qui est ici en tant que livre, puis pas ici, ou est-ce qu'ils te disent qu'est-ce que tu as le droit d'avoir puis pas avoir?
C'est à mon choix.
C'est à ton choix, toi?
Oui. Puis je prends des recommandations aussi.
So the librarian says that she does have some control over what is and isn't here, and that she takes recommendations when they're obtaining new books. That's what I'm looking for.
C'est qu'elle cherche.
Mes viewers, ils veulent voir si vous avez des affaires LGBTQ. Puis la réalité, c'est qu'ils veulent pas vraiment en voir.
Sais-tu quoi? Depuis que je suis ici, j'en ai pas vu.
She says it don't seem to carry much. Moi, like, I can tell, je le dis en anglais, là, but I can tell que they're not out front and center even if you do. C'est ça qu'ils aiment pas voir, eux autres.
Mais j'ai beaucoup de romance, mystery.
But that's okay. That you got to get them thinking and reading.
Exactement.
Just...
Exactement. Puis si que j'ai pas un livre en particulier, ben je peux tout le temps voir si je peux l'avoir ailleurs, tu sais. Donc, ouais.
Non, excellent. Tu fais du bon travail.
Merci, Michael. Merci beaucoup.
All right, let's go see if Alvin made his way to the building yet. This guy's still rolling. He usually parks in the back over here, so if you were arriving, he would park here. They just had the pike fishing derby this weekend too. That's the river that they use right there. It's called the Chapleau River. So they're allowed to fish on it all the way to the other end over there. I won't be able to catch the other end of it from here. It's got to be a way for me to chat in this. Let's see, we have this crazy figure 8 bridge here. Would you die? What's up, AC? Incredible sunset views of the Milky Way, northern lights, and a constantly changing landscape. The Chapeau, a special location for photographers and stargazers. Can't be much in here. What? Am I reading that right? Always bring your camera. And most important, don't forget your adventurous spirit and imagination to carry you through this beautiful journey. We're actually getting some updates with that. He's back in school now. They did not enforce the last time we went on the property. I can't say they didn't enforce the trespass because no trespass lawfully occurred. But essentially, the school trespassed us province-wide. Now, they've kind of been told by the ombudsman that it wasn't enforceable, and I was able to return on the property, but it's still technically standing. And they also stuck me with an illegal non-communication order after I made a complaint, which is an abuse of those laws, right? Any kind of law like that, like the Trespass Property Act, can't be abused in order to silence someone or in order to prevent a complaint from being made. Yeah, AC is just easier. See, this is the pike fishing derby I was talking about that just occurred every year. But yeah, we had to pull our son out of school because they were violating the Education Act. And then the ombudsman had to essentially tell them that it truly was a violation of the Education Act. They can't shut off communications. They need to permit a parent from participating in the activities in the education. They need to permit a parent's advocacy. So if a parent tries to make a complaint or is criticizing the school, if they respond with something like a trespass or a non-communication order, those are abuse of offices. It's not a proper use of those laws. Unfortunately, the ombudsman hasn't really forced them to withdraw them, do anything. She's just kind of forced the director of education, Tom, to communicate with me despite the non-communication order and to allow me on the property despite the trespass notice. And they're just waiting for things to get into Human Rights Tribunal. Now, they had requested an extension. They were actually given until Monday the 9th. So Monday the 9th was their deadline to submit their response. I haven't received it, but they're not legally obligated to send it to me directly. They can file their response to the Human Rights Tribunal, and then the Human Rights Tribunal will forward it to me once they've received it or once they've had time to process it. But we should be going into mediation soon. I used to work with these guys. I had to walk through the bush and flag a line using a GPS to like show the machines where they can cut and not cut, to mark roads, mark waterways and stuff like that. So you're basically venturing deep into the bush with snowshoes when it's winter and just going around following a line on a GPS and tying flags to a tree or to trees on the way. It is cool. But in winter, there's a few times where I thought I was going to die out there. I was legit like, I still had to make my way back. And I'm like, there's no way I can make it out here. I'm dying. You don't have an idea what that is? Pretty sure it's what they call a sand crane or something like that. We have a bunch around here. This is the kind of thing that they go around asking businesses to contribute to. Yeah, a sand crane, something like that. And that's the end of it. Viet, possibly the crappiest internet company available. Well, Alvin is clearly not in a rush to get back here. Which means either he's avoiding it or the staff here doesn't actually care and has not actually called him. So we're gonna have to call this one if it doesn't show up soon. And then we'll be back again later when he's in the building and he'll be forced to address the bylaw. It's honestly, it feels like these things are bluffs. Like they release these bylaws knowing that they can't actually enforce them, and then they don't even make an attempt to force them, but they leave the bylaw on the paper. So that if a situation ever arises, they could be like, well, it is against the bylaws. Well, we're trying to challenge the bylaw, so how about you enforce it and we'll challenge it. I tried to. I don't know if you've seen the other video where we were here. He used his phone to do a cam back. That's the same bylaw officer. And I FOIA requested. I put two entries. One entry, I asked for literally everything in the phone. That was rejected. But I also asked for just the video of me that was recorded from that phone. That was rejected. I assume because he deleted it. So even if they wanted to present it, it didn't exist anymore. Well, yeah, we're gonna start packing it up. It takes me a little bit anyways. I can go in there. But yeah, essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna take clips from the video here to show that we've come once and it wasn't enforced. There's the police driving by. That was a pretty good timing to show up at the door. I passed the police. I'm gonna go in the lobby here. Right at the corner here. So when I was crossing the street right here, an officer passed right in front of me, and I already had the tripod camera out in my hands. So there's a high likelihood that they saw me and knew I was here, and they're hanging around, almost expecting a call to come in. I don't know why I have hard time zooming out. There they are again. Yo, I'm telling you, they're literally circling the block expecting somebody to call. Let's wait and see how long it takes for them to come back. Now, there's potentially 2, maybe 3 cruisers on the road right now in Chapleau. I don't think that was the same one, right? We saw one drive by and the other one drove by too quickly to have had time to circle the block. So that's 2 of them right there. They very well could be the only 2 on shift right now. And yeah, he definitely destroyed a public record. That's possible, but like I said, we've already been here for 30 minutes. I didn't look outside and see if they were circling around for that 30 minutes, but I saw them on the way in, and the fact that we just randomly look outside right now and they're still out here is what tells me they're just circling the block. But we'll see. If they don't come back in a minute, then they went somewhere. Otherwise, they're just circling around. Hey, that's the bylaw right there. I don't know if we saw it clearly on camera. The bylaw just drove by on that street. And there's a sled driving down the street. If you remember the map we were looking at, he's allowed to cross the street, so he's allowed to drive that way, but he wouldn't be allowed to drive down the street following it this way. Timmins Courier Service. I don't think so, but possible. Anything is possible. One thing is for sure is the cops driving around is a normal thing, it's part of their function. But the bylaw just driving around in circles, it feels like he's avoiding coming back to the town hall. We have a lot of snow here. Like, that's just a walkway. It's not even the street where things plow it. And the snow is pretty much as high as the railings. Well, then, if he's in here, you would have read that. I was getting ready to leave, though. That's exactly what I was doing. And yeah, we're going to come back at some point once we've confirmed that he's actually in the building. I also missed the town meeting. So I'd like to see what was actually said in the meeting. But I'll show the agenda on the full menu. There were 2 items in the agenda. Number 1 was just discussing recording the town meetings, and I think that's the city talking about how they plan on recording and putting them online themselves. And then the other one was back to the bylaw against recording in municipal buildings, which is the same thing they were doing up. Well, one thing I'll probably do, Prairie, is we're going to get ready to leave here, but we're going to circle the block like they've been doing just once and see what goes on. I'm running on Wi-Fi, so I don't know if it'll automatically switch over to data or if it'll cut the stream off once I walk away from the Wi-Fi. All right, Let's go walk around outside. I like this thing so my tripod shrinks down. And then it just closes up. And that was my tripod a minute ago. So now I can actually carry them both without that tripod knocking into everything. What the fuck? That door is locked. I just rammed it. There's the bylaw. That's him right there. Oh, well now. Is he pulling into the building? I'm starting the other camera up. Now I got my coat on and everything though. So you should be coming into this door here. I'll take a seat for a minute. The real camera can't get a shot. How's it going, bud? He's on his way. Get your hands full.
How you doing today?
Not bad. I actually wanted to talk to you about the no recording bylaw thing.
Yeah, I'm not the one to talk to.
You're not the one to talk to, but wouldn't you be the one to enforce it?
I don't know. I'm not sure what they put in the bylaw, to tell you the truth.
I missed the meeting, the only meeting that I missed, so I don't actually 100% know what was said.
There should be minutes of it, you could look at.
They'll be released this week sometime, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't even read it, so I couldn't even comment.
Well, I appreciate you just walking by. You earned yourself a little bit of cred there.
Oh, yeah.
Have a good day.
I didn't even recognize you, so.
This lines up with what I was saying earlier. It all appears like bluffs and weird ass stuff that they're putting in place without having any real intention of enforcing it, at least not now. That's the only bylaw officer we have in town. It's not like we have, a bunch of them and he just wasn't briefed on it. We have one bylaw officer and he has no idea what was put in this bylaw. So he knows the bylaw. He knows that there, in fact, was a bylaw put in place. saying that recording in municipal buildings is not permitted. But just like me, I don't have the actual details because it's not in writing yet. That would also cause another issue where it wouldn't be a clearly established bylaw, right? You haven't even formally put it in writing yet. You've only just announced that it was happening. So we're waiting for these agenda minutes to be released. And with those agenda minutes will come the actual wording of the bylaw that they put in there, because it's not included in the like agenda. But yeah, that's gonna be it. It's like we spent almost an hour here. Thanks for joining us on the live. We're gonna have to do this again. We told the mayor, if you watch the meeting with the mayor video, we told the mayor that if they pass this bylaw, we'd be back with the camera and that we would force them to enforce it. But it's just like all of these other people who are pressing trespassing charges, they're all getting withdrawn. When that gets to the Crown Attorney, when that gets to the court, the charges get withdrawn. So they never get to a trial and they never get a judge's decision, and there's never a precedent put on paper. So they're able to keep randomly doing this, randomly enforcing whenever they feel like it against the people that they don't like. It'll get thrown out in court, but they won't be forced to remove the bylaw, and they'll just repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's why we need to force them to enforce it, then take the fine all the way to trial, which is hard because even the Crown Attorney and the judge don't want it to go to trial. They withdraw the charges, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to accept a plea agreement or not. Even if you refuse every single plea agreement, you say, I want to go to trial, there's a high likelihood that they withdraw just before the trial. And the police abuse the process. Yeah, the police, it's like the civil parties, even the private corporations, abuse the Trespass to Property Act. They, and I was just talking about this earlier, if you guys caught that beer store video, like that was half a mess up on my part. It was not a planned audit. I was at Chili for Humanity and the beer store is right there, and something like I had some kind of assumption where I believed they were a Crown corporation. They're not. They're a government service provider by contract. They're contracted to serve that beer, which does still give us some bit of authority in auditing them, but they're a fully private company. That being said, just because you can put a policy in place, so your policy against recording might actually be lawful. You might actually be able to do it without violating the freedom of press because you're in private property. It's publicly accessible, so things become sketchy. But here's where things become sketchier. When a policy is implemented, especially if it's not backed by legislation. For example, this no smoking sign right here. That's backed by a law. So not only do I have to respect that, but they're legally obligated to put it here. Epic Cop Watch in Ottawa, I'll have to check that out. But basically, if they're putting up a sign that's not backed by a statute, like no recording here, like the beer store does, then there's a lot of steps that they have to follow in order to be within that procedural fairness. And they have a duty to establish the mens rea, the guilty mind, beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you look at that beer store video, when I went in there, first off, no one corrected me. Not a single one of them bothered to Google the fact that it wasn't a Crown Corporation. I would have adjusted my argument. Probably went in the parking lot earlier. But either way, I bluffed my way out of that one. But see how there's no sign? So even if that policy was in place, that bylaw was in place and backed by legislation, they dragged it out until the last minute, then stayed the charges. Yes, that's exactly what they do. They'll drag it out to the last minute, hoping that you take a plea, and then if you don't, they drop it. But anyways, as I'm saying, procedural fairness means that the sign needs to be on the door. Watch the beer store video. We walk in twice, and there is no visible sign on the door. So already your policy's void. Someone can't be surprised by the policy. It needs to be clearly indicated. Then their authority to prevent an entry is it's significantly stronger than their authority to remove someone afterwards. So if you go to enter a place like the beer store and they say, no, you can't come in if you're recording, now they've they've gone through that procedural fairness. They've told you before you've even violated their policy that you can't do it. If they didn't get you on the way in, and now you're out there, you've completed your shopping, you're at the checkout, and you're literally 20 seconds away from being done your entire interaction and leaving, now the question becomes, why is the policy being enforced? Because the policy doesn't have legislation to back. It's created with a purpose, with a goal. In this case, the beer store argued that the goal is loss prevention. It's security, it's to prevent theft. And that is why they enforce a no recording policy. So if you've completed your shopping, your interaction, you've not created a disturbance of any kind, and you've clearly not stolen anything, then that security threat or that concern that they may have with the fact that you may be casing the joint, you may be stealing, you may be doing whatever, has been dispelled. You're about to leave. They have no authority to force you to delete the video anyways. So what is the purpose in refusing service and telling you can't record when you're already on your way out? So legally speaking, that's defensible. There's nothing there. And then I always beat them to the punch. I don't let them tell me that I need to leave. I'll tell them that I'll leave after a certain thing has been done, like the license presented. So if you listen back to that video, not the security guard, not that person in charge, no one asks me to leave. The police officer does come and say they want you to leave, but that's overwritten by the fact that I thought he was a store manager, but I spoke to the store manager. He's actually the person in charge, is what they called him on weekends. The fact that that person invited me to stay overruled any kind of security guard's personal willingness to trespass me. At that point, it's the security guard who wants me gone and not the actual beer store. So he had no legal authority there. And because I was first, he didn't ask me to leave. And then I get mad and be like, well, now I need you to give me your license. In that case, the trespass could still be enforced because I've already been asked to leave. So now I'm trespassing. And requesting his security guard license doesn't eliminate the fact that I've been asked to leave now. But when the opposite is true, like in this case, if I ask the security guard for his license before being asked to leave, and he retaliates by refusing to provide the license and then calling the police to have me trespassed, that would have become an abuse of the Trespass to Property Act. And that's what the GSPS determined. The GSPS talked to him and they said, well, there's no actual trespassing happening here. It doesn't matter that it's on private property. It all appears to be an abuse of the trespass. This guy just wants a security license and you're calling the police. Now, maybe if he would have been like, no, I'm not legally obligated to show you my license. I need you to leave the store now. Still could be an abuse of the Trespass to Property Act, but at least now he's verbalized the command for me to leave the store. What he did is refuse to provide his license and then just walk away and call the cops without saying anything. So if you go through the video again, as crazy as I may be sounding, telling them it's a Crown Corporation when it's not a Crown Corporation, the fact is no one asked me to leave. No one triggered this Trespass to Property Act. And their so-called prohibited act of recording is invalid because of the procedural fairness and the mens rea. The sign wasn't properly displayed. I wasn't stopped on entry. So there's no procedural fairness there. And the mens rea, the guilty mind, is absolutely absent because I was convinced that it's Crown Corporation and I did nothing wrong. It was an innocent recording whatsoever. I did not see the sign, so I truly did not believe that there was a real legitimate legal sign. And that's another argument that can be made as well. If you are convinced, if you're making the legal argument that the sign is invalid, that it's, for example, if we go to public services and not a private corporation, that the no recording sign is unconstitutional, that means it doesn't exist. You have to treat that sign as if it doesn't exist if your argument is that it's unconstitutional. So in a case like that, even though you've seen the sign, the mens rea is still not there. You don't have the guilty mind of being trespassing on this public property because you believe the sign to be unconstitutional. So when you're talking about quasi-criminal stuff, the mens rea is required. They need to prove the guilty mind. And
is very hard to do when someone is exercising civil rights, whether they're on the property or not, whether, sometimes the person may have been actually justified in calling the police. The police probably should have not enforced it, but they chose to enforce it. And you get in those situations where it gets to court and the court says, well, there's no mens rea here. The crown attorney knows. So it gets withdrawn in court. But that won't be ruled an abuse for the police or the people. It's that gray line where, okay, this is on the gray line. Maybe we can charge them, but it'll never pass in court. Yeah, because you're acting under a right, and the Trespass Property Act doesn't apply if you're acting under a right. Now, it sucks that private corporations, something like a beer store, which is like hiding itself at arm's length, it's providing a government service, but it's a private corporation. They can get away with a lot more where they're not strictly, and that's what the legal language says, they're not strictly bound by the Charter of Rights, but they are still bound by certain aspects of it. And more importantly, what I was talking about there is my arguments change these days, where if I were to get trespassed in a private property, I wouldn't argue it as a violation of rights. I would argue it as an abuse of the Trespass to Property Act. It's just a more solid argument. In court, it's likely that your freedom of press may not be recognized inside a private store. However, if there was absolutely no disturbance, nothing going wrong, and they abused the Trespass to Property Act to remove you because you were recording misconduct or attempting to make a complaint, then that's an abuse of the Trespass Property Act, and it'll never hold up. So it's not a violation of civil rights, but it's an abuse of the law. All right, we're going on 59 minutes and 11 seconds. My hands are starting to get cold too. So thank you for joining us. And we'll see you guys again soon once these guys figure out what their bylaw is. We have confirmation from the bylaw officer that a bylaw is in place, but he doesn't know what's included in that bylaw. See you later, guys. I still don't know how to fucking shut these things off.